So welcome back to another edition of my podcast. And my guest is doing this for her YouTube channel. And this is a grand experiment, which my whole podcast is.
My favorite.
So I have with me Gayle Colman. Gayle is a CFP, has practiced out of the Boston area for decades and is now splitting time between South Carolina, Boston, outside of Boston, and Maine.
That's correct.
And she is just an awesome person. 28 minutes in this podcast is not going to do justice. Just to her depth and talent and what she brings. And the reason that we thought this would be fun to do is I recently was writing a chapter for a book where I referred to Gayle to her famous quote. And
which I said is only famous to Rick, but
and I have quoted this quote in several of the books that I've written, and I quote Gayle all the time when I speak, and I get the quote wrong. I mean, I'm kind of in the area. So Gayle, why don't so that we get it right? Why don't you go ahead and give us your famous quote?
Well, there's two versions. The first one is, I can only go as far with my clients as I've gone with myself. And then the second time it was said a few months later under the same kind of experience was, we can only go as far with our clients as we've gone with ourselves. And this was said over 20 years ago. So this is what's one of the reasons I'm here is it's fascinating to me that this quote is still interesting, if it is, but I leave that up to the expert Rick to decide.
I think what I mean, this resonated with me, and Gayle and I first met each other on the desert in California, I think it was, at a training with George Kinder. And we were actually in the second cohort of people that took this training to be able to train the 2-day seminar that he did.
7 stages of money maturity.
Money maturity, right. And
I actually met you in Nasrud before that. It was like, that was so.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
At Estes Park.
In Estes Park. So what had happened is George's book came out, and in the Boston area, he had a general public 2-day seminar. And I had attended that. And he asked, the participants, about 20 of us, why are you there? And I was probably the only financial professional at that program. And I said, well, I can only go as far with my clients as I go myself. So I'm here for my own development. And then we had Estes Park, and I think you and, everybody who was there mostly did the 2-day. And then George offered this deep dive for a week with people who wanted to learn more about the 7 stages of money maturity. So there were 10 of us. And yeah, and we all became best friends after that. We couldn't help it, right?
Quite a bonding experience, and it's true. Lifelong friendships were formed at that training. And so, Gayle, what you said around we can only take clients as far as we've taken ourselves. I mean, every once in a while, I come across these what feel like just huge universal truths. And I think this is so incredibly foundational and important to maybe to anybody in the helping business, to actually be a consumer of what they preach or the service that they deliver. And I mean,
Well, you know what? That's absolutely true. And when we're in these professions, when we are trained, those are some of the fundamental principles that are understood, I believe. But I want to just touch on something that you said. It's like these fundamental universal truths. When that's said, to me, that feels like it's a human truth. Even if I'm not helping, why would I ever want to engage in experience with someone that I care about and impose something on this person that I really never have embodied myself, that I haven't really directly experienced. And so that's where that comes from. Is we can all take an hour-long course or a weekend training and we think, oh, I get this. And this comes from the 5 stages of learning, and that I learned from Stuart Heller many years ago, that, we hear something, we review it, and we understand it. And that's all cognitive based. And when we understand something, our brain will tell us that we know it, and we do. But that's far, 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 far from actually embodying it and actually being able to deliver it and practice it in a really generous and loving, compassionate, wise way. So, I mean, it's funny to be on we're in our 60s, so we've been around the track a few times. We've done a lot of deep dives, on the desert. With the 7 stages was just one of them. And so I know you have a lot of people who are younger and come and speak to you about, what do we do, and to get trained. And it's really a journey. It's just simply practice. And I know that everyone's got their own journey. And our teachers show up when we're ready. And so I think I've said a lot, and I probably have gone sideways, so sorry. But I just wanted to make the distinction between when we understand something, that's one part of our learning stages. When we get into practice, that's when we actually have the experience that our clients will be having. So we want to have those experiences before clients do, or anybody we love that we're talking to. Yeah.
yeah, you just said a lot there. The thing that came up just right now is doing no harm, which is a tenet of the medical profession. And the idea that as you said, we don't want to foist onto somebody else projections and assumptions of what this is going to do for them when we have never experienced that ourselves or gone there, which is really shallow. But I don't know that it's perceived by the person as being shallow. It's like, oh, geez, I learned this is how it works, so I'm going to try it out on you. But you said something that I think, again, is so foundational. I think it goes back to how, if I want to say ancient and wise, this statement that you've made is. And I think there's a Bible scripture that says, be doers of the word and not hearers only, thereby deceiving yourself.
Interesting.
And that, I mean, That is so rich.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you just said. That because I hear it, because I understand it, because I have the knowledge, there's somehow this inborn ability we have to think that I got it or that I do it.
Yeah.
And that's a huge deception because I don't.
Yeah. And you know what, here's what's so cool is I think all religions has the same message. So in Buddhism, and in some of my teachers in Buddhism, they talk about, um, listen and then investigate. Do not believe what I'm saying, but hear what I'm saying and you investigate, you experience yourself what I'm saying. And you, by your own direct experience and practice, come to that realization. So goes back to what you said, the universal truths is that, and we all have different paths and different journeys, but essentially it's the same. You follow me?
I have so many thoughts going in so many directions because this is something that you and I grappled with along with several other planners. We called ourselves the pioneers.
Yeah.
And Dick Wagner was a member of that, Elizabeth Chaton, Marcy Yeager, Lisa Bowie, Troy Jones, David Brand.
Yeah. And then we had some extras that came. Guy Kennedy, Rich.
Yep. Dave Yeske.
Dave Yeske.
Michael Smith.
Yeah.
And we'd get together. We formed probably right around this training we did in the desert, which was around 2000. And, we've run into this thing called emotions and money. And what does this mean? And this is where I learned to throw out my agenda because they would get together in this location somewhere in the country and there'd be no agenda and we'd spend 3 days together. Yeah. I'm like, this is anathema. Are you kidding me? No agenda. We don't know who the speakers are. And so I got cured pretty quickly of that. And it was an incredibly rich time. And I said all that to say that we grappled with a lot of things during that. Like, okay, we need some guild, or how are we going to train? How are we going to mentor? How are we going to help people do their own work, right? What is this? What does it mean? And we never got it answered. And I'm just wondering today, Gayle, and I think it hits along what you just said. And maybe I'm jumping way too far ahead as a consumer, but there's a lot of consumers listening to this is like, okay, I think it makes intuitive sense. I think it makes intuitive sense, certainly to the consumer, that if somebody's going to be telling me to do something, I want them to have success in doing that. It's a question I always have of any consultant that I hired. Well, have they done it? Do they have successes? How do you know if somebody has done their own work? How do you know someone that has gone ahead before you?
Are you asking me as a person, or okay, as a person, or well, I notice I have several, I'd say, layers of answers. First, there's I'm going to use some integral language because that's where I've done a lot of training. So integral theory and integral coaching. And so you can have very exterior answers to that, all of these credentials. certified this, registered this. And I'd say those are important. But what is on the interior, which is invisible, which is your own felt sense, and which is, I'm just going to go there, where I've done a lot of work and continue to work, and is somatic intelligence. So your body wisdom. And what I'm excited about is brain science is now kind of proving the wisdom of our body, and it's now being measured. So we've got enough metrics and enough science that is supporting our own intelligence. And that's really, in my view, the most generous and loving direction we as human beings can go, regardless of what field we're in, financial planning, some other kind of medical profession, whether, whatever work we're in, to be able to point the people we are with and the ones we are serving back to themselves, because their wisdom is within them. It's inside of them. So when I am with someone, this is to answer your question, Rick, how do I know whether I'm with someone who's not full of shit? Sorry, I don't know if you, sorry. As how I'm,
This is unedited, Gayle.
well, good. I'm glad I didn't say another word, which I hope I don't. I feel it. I feel people. I actually am tuning into what my body's saying. And, am I comfortable? Am I getting a vibe? And it's, intuition, it's instinct. And it doesn't mean that if I'm getting a weird vibe, I'm going, oh, this person is awful, because it's not true. But it means that I'm going to be more discerning. I'm going to investigate. I'm going to understand more what's going on. Which, by the way, this points to something else that I wrote about almost 20 years ago. And it's about this safe space. So what does the space feel like that I am inhabiting? So it's not only our own body, but what's going on around me? Does this space feel authentic and clean and safe? And am I connecting with this person? So those are some of my barometers. And if I'm feeling funny or not safe or connected, then I will ask about it. I'll say, I noticed that this is going on for me. Can we track a little bit? I want to make sure that the people that are working with me, that I'm asking for support, that I'm feeling connected. So that answer your question?
Well, there's a lot of answers to the question in there, and I'm just appreciating your what do I want to say? Your ability to really be aware of your body and the flinches, my terminology, and the awareness, the wisdom that comes from that. And you are so far ahead of what I want to say, where this has gone, because as you've alluded to, there's lots of research coming out on the connection between the body and the brain and all of this. And you were into this. I remember sitting in meetings with you when you'd be like, whoa, stop, and would bring out, I'm just going to call it a flinch, because that's something that I can understand, or something that wasn't authentic, something that wasn't resonated, where I would just go, I just pound that baby down and just go ahead on through. And so in that way, you've been such a teacher to me. And getting back to this somatic wisdom, I'm going to guess a couple months ago, I had Barry Tesler on. And Barry Tesler is a somatic psychoanalyst or that a somatic therapist. And she was the first person I ever heard that used the term financial therapy. And I had no idea what the word somatic meant. Zero. And I think it's just so interesting that around that same time, you're dialed in to the body, to somatic wisdom. And I think what you say that is so true. And as you know, I am doing a lot of what's called internal family systems. And, as we look at all of these traditions and various philosophies, it's just amazing to me how they tie together, because in IFS, they would completely agree that the wisdom is within, that within every person, there's the wisdom and understanding to know what is needed, what the decision is. And the same thing with the Enneagram. The Enneagram is all about becoming present.
Yeah.
And accessing.
Absolutely. And integrating into the healthiest aspect of your typology. Yeah. Well, I want to just let's tap a little bit into bring even integral theory into this, and in the different lines of development, how our gardeners work. Those are different multiple intelligences. So the somatic line is just one form of intelligence. And just like spatial intelligence or cognitive or line or interpersonal or spiritual moral. But you and I had a conversation at retreat. It was back in 2006. I remember it distinctly because, you have these moments, like you kind of go, oh, that was a moment.
Yeah.
I still can picture it.
You made the famous quote. Like your famous quote moment.
Well, yeah, but this one was a more personal one, because you and I were sitting there. It was outside. There was a fence behind you. I don't know if you're going to remember this. Maybe you will. But I asked you, I said, when are we going to bring the wisdom of the body into all matters of money? This was 2006. And you looked at me like shaking your head in pity, like, whatever, Gayle. We can't even get the psychology of money going. And I just was like, okay, and it was at that time I had been studying, breath and body work with Gayle and Katie Hendricks. I was really deep into integral theory because of what Dick Wagner had done. And but your podcast is going to go everywhere. Why that quote is just, I think it holds that, we can only go as far with our clients and as we've gone with ourselves. We're still in development. We are just these human experiments. And, and is time up? I don't know. We could be coming to time and I don't even know it. We've just gotten started.
We got another 5 minutes, and maybe we do a second part to this. Yeah, I vaguely remember that, and my reaction is completely believable. Like, good grief, Gayle, you're like 10 years down the road.
Well, and guess what? So if we kind of mark 1995-ish, when the psychology of money became, kind of known, or it birthed. It's taken 25 years for the CFP board to have the psychology be any kind of competency that a CFP needs. So it's 25 years. Let's just say. I think
15, we got another 10 to go. for somatic.
Yeah. And I'm like, so I've been told that, I'm too far ahead of the parade. I scare people. And, that used to get me down. And right now I'm like, you know what? Whoever wants to come play, you bright light bulbs that are gutsy and want to jump off and leap and learn how to really flow and not have to know. Like, I bet you don't need an agenda anymore for all of your meetings. You can flow in the meetings and agendas are great as a scaffolding, but when life is about, as you said, learning to be in the present moment. Like, this is it. If we're in the future, it's a future fear that, if we're in the past, is this regret? And those are places that are pointing to us to come home to what's going on right now. And what's that fear? And, and clean it up. Just love it, appreciate it, befriend it, clean it up. It's just a part of us, and it's a wave. It's an emotion that's going to come and go because we're human.
I want to be sure to mention your work in somatic finance. You have a blog that comes out. Do you put that out when you want to, or is it twice a month?
It's twice a month. Well, I have a blog, and then with a practice, and then I have a second blog that comes out with a deepening practice. So to support embodiment, the Soma, we practice, and I have a ton of practices and on my websites, but so this is just a tiny practice to get us into our body and to begin to experiment. So easy peasy.
I want to say there's so much to say about the body connection. And it was actually out on the desert, I think, when I did my first body scan type meditation.
Uh-huh.
And I remember some stuff that came up for me that I was just shocked that was a sensation in my body. I mean, I remember when my coach Tracy Beck has once said, so Rick, what are you feeling in your body? I'm like, what are you talking about? Feeling in my body? What? Well, Rick, all feelings start as sensations. I'm like, not with me. I was just clueless. And I like to say, if I can get this stuff, anybody can get this stuff. But what's the address of your blog?
I would go to www.somaticfinance.com and then find it there.
Great.
But and it's, I don't know. I mean, that's where I would go, and there's a bunch of practices, and you can sign up there. But
I just want to say that Gayle is a phenomenal writer, And there's so much that you write on that I just resonate with. And when I'm really resonating to my bones, I'll reply to you like, wow, this was like extraordinarily good, because it's all so good.
Thank you. You're very kind.
And you just have a wonderful way of making this really practical and applicable. So if the word somatic just scares you or causes any confusion, get on Gayle's blog and read that, and all of a sudden it's going to come home to you that Gayle, you're talking about everyday life, and in such a rich, such a down-to-earth, personal, tangible way.
Thank you. Well, but wouldn't you say that when we really, really hone in on the financial planning that we do, and we hone in on money, that money is just very basic and normal, that if we can really come home to ourselves, really love ourselves, really just, that money can be just as simple as that as well.
We're going to end it there.
Okay.
Words of wisdom. Absolutely. So Gayle, thank you so much for the conversation. Appreciate you, and I hope everybody will tune in to your blog. So
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you, Rick, and all the work you do and the innovative ways that you bring extraordinary work out in the world. And going back to the doing our own work before we attempt to do it with our others, you are practicing what you preach, Sue. So
thank you.
thank
All
you.
right, take care and look forward to joining you in another edition.